Something Wild is a 1986 comedy or rom-com road movie thing directed by Jonathan Demme.
Yeah, so this film stars Jeff Daniels, and he plays a character called Charlie. And when we first see him, he's on his lunch break, and he's in a New York kind of cafe restaurant. And he gets to the end of his meal, and he realises he can't pay, so he does a runner. And as he goes out into the street, a young woman follows him, played by Melanie Griffith, saying, "You haven't paid for your bill." And he's like, "What are you talking about? Of course I have." And she's like, "No, you haven't." And quickly realise that she's caught him kind of red-handed. So from that, they get into a kind of altercation, and she ends up she ends up offering to give him a lift back to his office, and then kind of kidnaps him.
Yeah, sure.
And takes him off on a kind of wild road trip. He goes along. He starts to go along with it after a while, as he kind of realizes this. I mean, his character is quite naive. He's a bit of a yuppie, so it's typical 80s yuppie kind of guy from New York City, and she's more of a kind of wild child, maybe left over from the 60s. When she first turns up, she's got this kind of black bob thing going on. She looks a little bit like the silent actor Louise Brooks, who made that hairstyle famous. And she's clearly not quite sure. She drinks a lot, and she's a bit head in the clouds, and steals a bit of liquor here and there. And so you're not totally sure what's going on. But as he kind of realises the situation is not that dangerous, he kind of starts to go along with it. And you feel like because he ran out of the shop not paying his bill, he's got a kind of repressed rebellion about him. And then Ray Liotta turns up.
Yes.
And things do turn a little bit dangerous for him. So it's an odd film. It's a different film. I mean, that's kind of the plot. I don't want to go too far into the plot because lots of things happen in it. But I really enjoy it. I think it's you weren't so sure about it.
Well, I hadn't seen it before, and I didn't know what to expect. But it's kind of a rom-com crossed with like a 90s thriller, like sort of Unlawful Entry or Pacific Heights or something like that. Yeah, so it's a bit jarring.
Which randomly, one of them stars Melanie Griffith and one of them stars Ray Liotta.
Exactly, yeah. So
how crazy!
This is where they found their feet on.
Yeah, I mean,
90 thrillers.
It is because I saw this. I think I saw this on TV years and years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I think it's really fun, and it is offbeat, and it is quirky, and I really enjoyed it. I have to say, when I watched it last night, some of the things you were saying, I kind of agreed with. Although I still really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it because I really like the characters, and I really like the performances in there. I mean, it is Jonathan Demme, and it was Jonathan Demme kind of mid-80s. He'd had a career he did some Roger Corman movies. And then, of course, I mean, everyone knows him for Silence of the Lambs, obviously, and Philadelphia. They're his two big films, which are great films. I just really enjoy this one. I think it's a really good cast. And I think there's some really interesting stuff in there. Obviously, she takes him home to her mother. I mean, it's clear that she's searching for something. So Ray Liotta was her ex-boyfriend. They kind of grew up together in the same hometown, and he's like he's got out of prison, so he's clearly from the wrong side of the tracks. And
it's a classic Ray Liotta psychopath role.
Oh, it is, basically. And he is amazing in it, and he's clearly having a great time in it. There's some very funny moments in there, and some quite dark moments as well. But he's clearly having a ball playing that. I think this was he'd done another film, but this was like his first big role. And whether Goodfellas he got because of this, because obviously that's quite a nasty role.
I think he's slightly less psychopathic in Goodfellas than he is in this, to be honest.
Maybe, yeah. But I think it's. I mean, it's kind of known as a cult classic. This film, a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it. So it's one of those films.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think because of the type of film it is, there's so many other films like that. But obviously, when this was made, it probably, had I seen it then, it would have felt quite fresh. But now, because there's so many other films like that, both of the rom-com variety and the sort of thriller variety, that it, seeing it now, it doesn't feel that fresh. But
it's one of those. It's kind of one of those films where I often. So you have certain films that people say, "Oh, it's really cliche," and you're like, Well, it can't be cliche because it became.
No.
It was the original cliche
Exactly.
film.
So while I was watching, I thought, well, even though this feels cliche to me, I know that obviously at the time it wouldn't have been, and films that came after it, I know, have copied it or done a similar thing. I can't say I've seen another film that does sort of mash up the rom-com with a.
No, although I suppose
thriller.
Natural Born Killers maybe I know that's more violent.
Yes.
And they are more psychotic.
I don't think there's quite as much comedy in it.
It's got that kind of same offbeat quirkiness mixed with, they're genre mashing, which is what people like Tarantino do, and Jonathan Demme, a little bit in the kind of Roger Corman days maybe. And I think that a lot of that went on in the 90s. I mean, in the 90s did spawn quite a few of those kind of Natural Born Killer type films. True Romance, maybe. Obviously they're more about darker and more violent subjects. Although, this film does take a slightly dark turn. I just really enjoy it. There's some nice moments in there, I think. And there's some. I mean, it's clearly offbeat because there were some quite odd characters. So they kind of, because it's kind of a road movie. So as they go through, I think they're traveling from New York to Pennsylvania. They meet kind of offbeat kind of people. So the first place they stop in a liquor store, and the guy behind the counter was the guy in Repo Man. The one who's at the dustbin spouting all the kind of acid talk about aliens and things. I can't remember the actor's name. And then they go to a thrift store, and there are these kind of two crazy old women in there. One's Scottish because she is they're both. One's the mother of Jonathan Demme,
right,
and the other is the mother of David Byrne, the vocalist from Talking Heads. And of course, there is a Talking Heads link to Jonathan Demme because he made Stop Making Sense, the amazing Talking Heads film. And I think David Byrne sings on a couple of the songs on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
I think he's on the opening song. So John Waters is in there.
He is, yes.
He plays a car salesman.
Yep.
And also the filmmaker John Sayles. He plays a policeman. And there's a very funny line. Melanie Griffith talks about liking a large thing between her legs.
Oh, yes. About his motorbike, yeah.
About his motorbike, which is a very funny moment. Yes. I mean, it's a quirky kind of offbeat road movie. Yeah, so we've mentioned Ray Liotta, obviously Goodfellas, and he's gone on to do quite a few films in his career. Then also Jeff Daniels. I mean, Jeff Daniels came from, I think, again, these kind of early performances for these guys. He'd done Terms of Endearment, which he was kind of a similar character in. And then he's done some really interesting films, Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, and Speed. And 2 Days in the
Valley,
Valley,
which we covered.
Yeah.
One of the first ones we covered. Second one we covered. Which is quite cool. And Melanie Griffith, of course, who is, like I said, she's kind of known for playing this kind of wild child character. I mean, her mother, I think her mother's Tippi Hedren, the actress from The Birds, the Hitchcock film.
Yeah.
I think that's her mother. I think.
Big in the 80s.
She was very big in the 80s.
Girl,
She was in Working Girl and Bonfire of the Vanities.
Yeah.
She's great in that film. And she did a few films in the 70s when she was quite young. She's been doing stuff forever. Yeah, and also Margaret Colin, who from Independence Day.
Yes,
she was in there. She's not in it much, but she's quite cool.
When I was watching it, I thought, who is that?
Right.
And I had to look it up. I was like, yes, of course she's in it.
She was also in a Dudley Moore film, Like Father, Like Son, because I just watched the most random crap from the 80s. That one. It's got Dudley Moore and Sean Astin. Cool. It's one of those films where son and father, their minds swap.
That sounds very original.
Not at all. She's in that as well.
Okay.
It's quite terrible, actually. But when you're 14, it's quite fun. And it turns up on the telly.
I may well have seen it, but
you may have done.
Don't know.
We won't be covering it here. No. There's loads of songs on this. I think actually in the credits there's like 57 songs listed.
Wow.
Lots of it's quite eclectic music. Lots of there's some people like New Order on there. Fine Young Cannibals, do you remember them?
Yeah.
They're on there. And Big Audio Dynamite. Lots of groups and lots of 80s stuff and kind of avant-garde time. In fact, there is an actual soundtrack done by John Cale and Laurie Anderson, and they were two kind of avant-garde pop people from the 80s. And even the end credits features a really wonderful moment with a woman singing to the left of the screen as the credits roll up, and she's doing of course the Wild Thing, the song "The Wild Thing" by the Trogs features quite heavily in the film, and she does like a kind of reggae version of it at the end, which is makes for quite an interesting credit scene. But yeah, so it's really cool, and I quite enjoy it. I enjoy it quite a lot. So you can see it.
Yep.
I've actually got just a normal British release DVD of it. I had this for a long, because I like this film a lot. As soon as I had it on video, and as soon as the DVD came out, I went and picked it up.
Snapped it out.
I did. But there's a better release of it, because Criterion released it. They released it first in the US, was it 2011?
Yeah.
And then they've just recently released it, I think this year.
Last month, yeah.
Last month.
Or February.
They've released the UK version of it. And I don't have it as of yet, because I have no money at the moment until next month. But
you're sure to pick it up at some point.
I will pick it up at some point, definitely, because like we said when we did the Fisher King, Criterion have started releasing some stuff over here, and some quite good stuff. So
I mean, one thing I would say that looking at the features, it's not as packed as some Criterion stuff.
Okay, right.
But there you go. But still, it's Blu-ray, so it will look nice.
I'm sure it'll look lovely. Yeah, and one other thing. So there's two moments in this film. So there's an interesting little tidbit that is not actually in the trivia of the IMDb page.
Wow, maybe you should add to it.
Maybe. So there's two moments in the film where there are TVs in the background and they're playing films on there, as happens in a lot of films. But these two films are short films. And they are two short films that are part of a collection of 6 made by Austin, Texas filmmakers. They were made in the 70s by kind of interesting experimental filmmakers, people like that. And Jonathan Demme, I think he found these, or he saw these quite early on in his career, and they showed them at a festival, I think in Texas in 1981. And they were kind of then put on a shelf and started to collect dust. Although he put 2 of them in this film. There was Speed of Light and Invasion of the Aluminium People. But then Jonathan Demme came back a few years ago, and he kind of got them out again and decided he actually wanted to put them out. And we actually mentioned, when we did the Toby Hooper video, we mentioned the 2 early films, Eggshells, and there's a short one that we mentioned as well. They were restored by a guy that I did some work with, Mark Grant. Well, he actually came along and he restored all these short films, and he and Jonathan Demme himself put together this really nice box set of those 6 films. And if you like, if you're in Britain, chances of you finding this and buying it are quite slim, because I think it was an American-only release. But if you like kind of strange experimental films, then track this down, because it's really, really good. And because I was working there, I built the DVD menu for it.
Did you?
Yeah. So
and did you get this for free?
I got this for free.
There you go.
Yeah, so if your DVD doesn't work, blame me. But no, it's really cool, and there's a really great booklet in there all about it. And Austin, Texas is quite known for, obviously they have the South by Southwest Festival every year. So a lot of really interesting filmmakers that have come from Texas. Richard Linklater comes from Texas, and others. But I don't think Jonathan Demme was from Texas. But this is just really interesting collection, and there's also a music link as well. So a lot of these guys who made these films were Toby Hooper, of course, he came from Texas as well. Yeah. So these films are very kind of based in music and sound and experimental and stuff like that. So if you can find it, get that too, because it's really cool. So that was Something Wild, and we hope you enjoyed this video. And if you've seen it, leave us a comment.
Yep.
Or if you plan to see it, or if you pick up the Criterion version of it and you go away and like it, come back and leave us a comment.
Let us know what you think.
You might hate it. Come back and leave us a comment on that as well. But yeah, let us know what you think. We'd love to have a discussion with you.
Yep. Thanks for watching, and check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you again soon for another one.